Okay, hello, welcome to today's video, welcome to today's live, where we're going to be talking about why self-love is going to disappoint you, and then it will set you free in the way that you can be free in this reality. Okay, so what I'm going to be talking about today is essentially the truth about self-love and what it is actually going to do for you versus what most of us have been geared to expect from our spiritual work, what most of us have been primed to think the ultimate answer is with our spirituality, our self-help, our self-love, our personal growth. What most of us believe is supposed to happen when we're doing it right, and what liberation is actually supposed to be, and why self-love isn't going to get you that, because that doesn't exist, and why self-love will lead you, like I say, to a freedom that is actually possible in our actual reality that we actually live in, okay? And it's going to be something that we slowly work ourselves up to, that we slowly accept, that we slowly come to terms with, because again, it's going to be, for most of us, a pretty big letdown, that the thing we've all been conditioned to expect, and the thing that we're all hoping for, even from, like I say, like religion, from health gurus, from like everyone who basically, right, the promise of the ultimate after, the promise of the, and then you get this, and you figure this all out, and you do it right, and you do it perfect, and you perfect the thing, and then you never have pain again, and then you never suffer again, and then you know everything you need to know, and you have abiding peace for the rest of your life, and no more trauma, and no more struggle, and you've healed all your trauma, and you've healed all your codependencies, and you've healed all your health issues, and or, right, you do your spirituality right, and maybe some of those things still exist, and maybe you still have hard things that happen, and blah, 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 but it just doesn't affect you anymore, and you just have abiding peace, and you have abiding love, and abiding knowing that it's all for a greater purpose, and you never go down into despair, or anxiety, or depression, or negative anger, or sadness ever again, like all of this. And that is not what is going to happen. Okay, and that is never going to happen in any spiritual discipline, in any spirituality that we ever do, in any self-help, in any personal growth. We're never going to achieve heaven, the heaven that we have been primed to believe exists, because the other half of this heaven that we're all seeking, that we've all been trained to seek, and that we all sought in our childhood and then literally have built all of our spirituality, all of our religion, all of our self-help, all of our personal growth around this belief that there's something we can do, that there's some state we can reach, there's some thing we can become, that there's some enlightenment we can experience, that leads us to a place where we never struggle again, like where nothing bad ever happens to us again, where we never have anything that, you know, we don't understand happen again, no trauma ever happens again, no tragedy ever happens again, no problems ever happen again, and we get to this place where life is just perfect. Right? We're all kind of seeking for and searching for and hoping for this heaven again, where we're allowed to be our full selves, where we fully know who we are, right? And what we want, and what is right for us, and what our expression is. And we can just do that all the time. And everyone around us loves us, and we never have a health issue ever again. And we get to just live this fantasy of this perfect day where nothing ever goes wrong ever again for the rest of our lives. Or we believe that this is what's going to happen when we die, right? Like that we are going to do religion well enough, that we're going to follow the rules perfectly in our human life, that we're going to do our karma, we're going to whatever. And then we're going to transcend to the next life where we have nirvana, or where we have heaven, or where we're delivered. You see, it's all the same thing. We're all hoping, either consciously or subconsciously or both, that if we do our spirituality right, that if we find the right religion, that if we do our self-love right, that if we do our personal growth right, that if we do the thing, the diet, whatever it is for us, that we are thinking, if I just perfect myself in this way, right? We have to really boil down the psychology here. If I just perfect myself in this perfect way, or if I find the perfect thing, that's the savior thing for me, and I dedicate myself to it perfectly, I will be delivered from all pain. I will be delivered from all suffering. I will be given all of the resources that I need. All of the struggle will be taken away. And I will live happily ever after. Right? And that's essentially what we're all seeking, if we're kind of being honest with ourselves, when we're doing our spirituality, when we're doing our self-love, when we're doing our personal growth, when we're doing all this stuff. And this is the reason we buy into things that aren't real. This is the reason we live lives of superstition instead of working with reality. This is the reason we get so stuck in believing we're doing it wrong, and that is why we're suffering. And this continual trap of navel gazing and self-awareness, where that's not really the issue, right? Where we are now in this spirituality, which has been going on for a really, really long time, where, like, mentalism, where we're starting to be taught that literally everything is a result of our thinking. Everything is a result of us. The universe revolves around us. We all have our own little one self universe, that we're not interacting with each other, that we're not interacting with a system, that consensus reality doesn't affect us, and that we can all just perfect our minds, or perfect our vibration, or perfect our way of loving ourselves, and then the universe is only going to reflect back to us heaven. You see? And we need to start to understand where this came from, why we all believe this, why we're so susceptible to this, why it's not reality, why it's never going to work, so that we can understand what self-love is actually going to give us, and that we can expect that instead of being like, when we get it, being like, oh, it didn't work, right? Like, self-love didn't work, and now it's time to try something else. And we keep chasing the highs of the plant medicines and the ceremonies and the personal growth retreats that fire you up and get you all cortisoled and all this stuff, because we're searching for a thing that doesn't exist. We're being promised a thing that doesn't exist. We're being told that we should keep searching for that thing that doesn't exist, because it does. We're being told that if we just do it right, we will find that thing that doesn't exist. And then we're constantly like, but why doesn't it exist? What am I doing wrong? And the answer is, you're not doing anything wrong. Okay, so way back, right, in our childhoods, again, I know this is not fun. I know it's not fun to realize that so much of what we think is like profound spiritual teachings, profound spiritual insights, channelings from aliens, and and it sounds so good, right? Like, yes, just take responsibility for yourself, just your thoughts, and we're infinite potential, and you can create whatever you want if you just believe, and like, if you love yourself enough, everyone will know how to love you, and if you love yourself enough, you'll just know how to listen to your body, and you'll know how to do all these things, and life will be perfect. And yes, it makes so much sense. And like, the Pleiadians are telling us that if we just hold our vibration to this new thing, the old vibration can't touch us. And we just, of course, we want to believe that, right? Of course we do, because that would make life simple. That would make life much simpler than it actually is. And also, it perfectly tracks with our childhood psychology that most of us never grew out of. And so that's what I'm saying. It can be really shitty to hear, like, oh my God, like, to have that bubble burst of like, I thought this was like a super profound spiritual teaching, and I was like so much smarter than everybody else. Like, understanding karma, and understanding my vibration, and understanding the law of attraction, and understanding my inner world and self-awareness and all this stuff, and then realizing like, oh, okay, yeah, no, this is actually just childhood psychology dressed up as something else. And you can even feel like I'm oversimplifying, or all the, like, we might want to reject this idea. And I'm just saying, okay, that's fine. You don't have to accept this. I'm just putting it out there as something to consider and see if it fits. And like, because again, I understand that it can be really shitty to hear, like, okay, this isn't just profound spiritual teaching, this is childhood psychology dressed up as aliens. And we might not want to believe it, and that's okay. But I'm just saying, like, let's listen, let's just be open to the idea and see where we go with it, okay? So, in our childhoods, again, right, the psychology that we had as children, and we have to understand, again, how profound our childhood experience was on shaping who we were going to be for the rest of our lives and how we were going to think. Because literally, right, like our brain structure, how we were going to think, what we believed about ourselves in the world was being formed in these formative years. That's why they call them the formative years. And our physiology was getting programmed, wired into it. Okay, so we really have to like consider this, yeah? We didn't come into our adulthoods blank slates with full capacity and perfect alignment with what reality was. Okay, we didn't come into our adulthoods with the capacity to just tell fact from fiction. We had programs that had been programmed into our bodies, into our psychology, from the time we were born, before we developed cognition. And a lot of us, I don't think, recognize how profound that is. We are all thinking, I have my cognition, and I thought it all through. Like everything I believe for a reason, because it's real. And I've thought it through, and I have good reasons to believe it. And it's because it's real. And so many of us, when we first start to question our perception, we have an identity crisis, we have an existential crisis, because we start to realize, oh my God, there are so many things up there. There are so many ways of being, so many assumptions that I make about myself and others, and about how reality works, that aren't reality, that are totally just assumptions based on programs that I got handed when I was a child. And there are so many things that I'm doing that I have created stories for in the interim, that I've created a reason for afterwards as I grew up to validate and justify. And my mind has been filtering evidence that says my story isn't true, and my mind has been blowing up evidence that says my story is true, and I have not been seeing reality correctly. And I have not been behaving in a way that actually makes any sense in how reality is. But it made perfect sense to me. And my body was doing it even though my brain didn't even want to sometimes. Right? We're going to start to realize that like our programs are really, really profound. And how we were trained to behave and what we were trained reality was in those first 7 to 10 years of our lives has become the foundation. And if it was incorrect, and for most of us it was, we are now living as though our reality that we learned is reality. And then we're wondering why we have such a hard time solving our problems, and we run into the same issue over and over and over again. And we are caught in loops of behavior and loops of thought, and just we can't seem to get ourselves out. But it's because you're not making a conscious choice to be like that. It's because you got a program that is incorrect, and it's running the show because it's the base program. And changing those base programs is hard, and it takes a long time of repetition and challenging the nervous system and soothing the nervous system and learning how to really question your reality without losing your grip on reality, without going into the, well, then nothing matters, nothing is anything, we can't know anything, forget it. Yeah, there's a lot of traps on this path. I wouldn't say traps. There's just a lot of things that make this path really challenging that most people just veer off of it, because coming into reality and just facing the truth is often very sobering, and it's not magical, and it's not happily ever after. It's like, oh, life is just kind of hard and I'm going to have to sort of figure it out. And that's kind of what it is. Okay, so in our childhoods, again, we could not meet our own needs. We had no agency. We had no capacity to understand ourselves or reality or how to get our needs met. All we had were our caregivers. And from our perception, okay, this is something that's super important to understand, so please don't click away. If you feel like you've heard me talk about childhood psychology and you're like, yeah, whatever, I already know. No. Again, wait, listen to this. This is really important. Okay. In our childhood psychology, we would have perceived our caregivers as adults perceive God. Okay? We would have perceived our caregivers the exact same way adults now perceive God or the universe, which is this. We would not have had the cognitive capacity to understand that our caregivers were just people who had limits, who had conditioning themselves, who had things they didn't understand, who were not omnipresent and omnipotent and omni-aware, that they were just human beings trying to figure things out and doing the best they could. So again, some of us had very abusive caregivers. Some of us had caregivers who literally, because of their own stuff, harmed us, like actively harmed us. Most of us had caregivers who taught us that who and what we were was not okay, that shamed us for who we were, that didn't help us grow, that when we made messes and we did all these things, they yelled at us and scolded us and all of this. So we have that. But even those of us who had caregivers who did their absolute best and were absolutely loving and doing as much as they possibly could for us, none of us had gods for parents. Meaning, there were going to be times when we were sick and they couldn't make us better. There were going to be times when we wanted something and they couldn't give it to us. There were going to be times when we were in pain and they couldn't understand what was wrong with us and they couldn't help us. There were going to be times where we fell down and they weren't there to pick us up. There were going to be times when our caregivers were awesome and then we went out and our teachers let us down and our friends let us down and our religious authorities let us down and taught us things that weren't true in real reality. And to us, again, as small children, we would have grown learning that our caregivers were the source of everything, because they were, for us, in that moment. And we would have started to perceive that if they weren't meeting our needs, if they weren't making our pain go away, if they weren't rescuing us, if they weren't giving us what we wanted, we were all going to start to assume they were doing that on purpose. Okay? Because to us, they knew and had everything. We did not understand that our parents were limited beings. To us, in our infancy, the first 0 to 7 years, mom and dad had access to absolutely everything. And if they weren't giving it to us, they were withholding it for some reason. And in our childhood psychology, we were learning that the thing that made them give us stuff that we wanted, the thing that made them rescue us from pain, the thing that made them save us, was our behavior. So all of us developed a codependent relationship with our caregivers, where we believed fully and in our bodies, we experienced that mom and dad had everything, caregivers had everything, whoever raised us, caregivers, they had access to everything. Our behavior was the thing that made them give it to us or not give it to us. our behavior was the thing that made them reject us and withdraw, and therefore made us unsafe, or the thing that made them come close and love us and make us safe. Our behavior was the reason the omnipotent, omnipresent, everything caregivers did or didn't provide for us. So we believed if we became the perfect people that they needed us to be, this would unlock the key to them giving us everything we needed, to us having all of our needs met, no pain, and ultimate pleasure. Being able to express ourselves, being able to be exactly what we want to be and do exactly what we want to do. We were perceiving the only reason we were in pain was because omnipotent, omnipresent caregivers were rejecting us, withholding from us, denying us, yelling at us, scapegoating us, hurting us in some way. Please take a second to think about how profound that is. We believed, because in our childhood psychology, this was the thing that made the most sense to our experience. Caregivers had access to everything. Everything we wanted and everything we needed. The perfect heaven of a childhood, of a life experience, where we have all of our needs met, we're perfectly protected, we're perfectly supported, everything we are is supported, we feel pleasure all the time. Heaven is available through caregivers. The only reason I don't have it is because caregivers are withholding it from me. The one thing I have is my behavior to dictate whether caregivers give it to me or not. That is our foundational core programming, right? If you remember, if you watch my Approval is the Matrix video, I highly recommend you do that. If you're watching this on Facebook or on YouTube or on Instagram in the replay, all the links will be in the description. Like the link to that will be in the description. We believed that a heaven was possible before we even knew what heaven was. In our nervous systems as children, that's what we wanted. We wanted perfect safety, perfect love, perfect provision. Because we would have had that in the womb and for a period of time in our infancy. And then it would have started to get broken by caregivers not understanding us, not being able to provide for us, not being able to give us what we need. But from our psychology, again, they had access to everything. They were the source of everything. They were God. So if they weren't giving it to us, if they weren't providing for us, it was our fault. We were doing something wrong. Heaven was possible, and caregivers were just withholding it from us. That is what we would have believed in our childhoods. And they were withholding it from us because of something we were doing. We weren't acceptable enough. We weren't good enough. We weren't doing the right behavior. So please, take a second and think about how profound that is. We fully believed caregivers had access to heaven, and they weren't giving it to us because of our behavior. Now, what do most of us believe about God, about the universe, about the law of attraction, about the aliens, about self-love, about self-improvement? We believe if we just do the things right, if we just do the practices right, if we do the religion right, if we pray the right way, if we do the diet right, if we do self-love right, what's going to happen? We're finally going to be delivered into that heaven where we mastered our behavior. We finally lived up to the omnipotent thing that has the wisdom of everything, that has the key to our heaven, and it's going to give it to us. And then we'll never hurt again. then we'll never struggle again. Then we'll never have anything bad happen to us again. Do you see how most of our spirituality, most of our self-help, most of our self-improvement is just our childhood trauma being projected onto something else now? Can you get that? So what all of us are actually expecting is going to happen when we do our self-love right, when we do our spirituality right, when we do our spiritual growth right, when we do the diet right. Yeah, we all think if I just get my behavior right, I will have the perfect actor. The omnipotent, omnipresent thing, whatever I've decided, right? Now I don't call it caregivers anymore. Now I call it the universe or God or spirit or vibration or my karma or whatever. I'm not even religious. I'm just on a self-love path. I'm just personal growthing. I'm just trying to reach my highest potential. But we're all doing it because we think when we get to this place, there's going to be a perfect, where we have healed all of our trauma, and we have perfect self-awareness, right? We all have our version of what we think we have to become, our perfect thing, and then we will get freedom from everything. And like I say, some of us are like, well, I'm not even believing in religion. I don't believe in the universe. I don't believe in any superstition. I'm just trying to become my higher self. I'm just trying to find my right place in the universe. And if I just find my right type and do my right job and all of these things, you're still looking for heaven. You're still looking for and then I did it right. And now no more bad things ever happen. And that's never going to be reality. Okay? Number one, we are not the center of the universe. As in, like me, Allie, everything that happens in my life is not because I'm making a choice, or my vibration, or my mental state. Some things are. I have some control, I have some autonomy, and I live in a system. I live in a system that's man-made, that I didn't create, that I didn't choose, and I am suffering the consequences of the collective choice. For instance, I wouldn't choose to have all of my food wrapped in plastic. I would not make that choice, right? I didn't create that system, and yet, that's the system. I wouldn't choose to have a large portion of my tax dollars going to fund a military. I wouldn't choose that. And yet, that's a part of the reality I live in. I wouldn't choose. Yes, we strive, that's exactly why we strive for perfection, right? I wouldn't choose to have an entertainment industry where actors and actresses make millions of dollars and teachers and janitors don't make enough money to live. I would not choose that. And yet, I live in a system. I wouldn't choose to have all of our energy needs be met by fossil fuels. I didn't choose that, and I wouldn't choose that. But I live in that reality. I didn't choose my body. This is not the body that I made a personal choice to have. And then a whole bunch of the things that happened to my body from the time it was born to the time I started being able to make choices about it, a whole bunch of things happened to it, and it didn't get taken care of, and it got really messed up. And I wouldn't have chosen that. But I didn't have the autonomy not to choose that. I didn't have the autonomy to choose something else. And it wasn't happening because of me. Because the world doesn't revolve around me. All of those other things that I listed, the taxes and the fuel and all that stuff, that shit was happening before I was born. That shit is happening and it's affecting me every single day. I live in that system, whether I like it or not. I live on a planet that has that system, whether I like it or not. It's not because of me, but it affects me. What my parents chose to do to me from 0 to 14 before I had any autonomy, I didn't choose that. I had no capacity to do it, and it was mostly because of them. It wasn't even about me. So many of the things that I hated about myself, and that I rejected in myself, and that I thought was terrible about me, that I learned in my body that if I am that way, I'll die. It was just their shit. They didn't deal with their shit. They passed it on to me. And yet, here I am, with all of it. I made it about me, because everyone does. We all do that. That's what our human psychology does. But it wasn't about me. I was just, right? I was a thing that they were projecting onto their shit. I was just collateral damage. Ultimately, in a lot of ways. The world doesn't revolve around me. The world, the earth, doesn't revolve around humans. We like to think it does. We really like to think that reality is human-centric. But reality was going on a long time before humans. And if we off ourselves, reality is going to keep going. We really like to overinflate our importance. That we are the most important thing in the universe. We are a blip in nothing in real reality, in the scope of things. Not everything has everything to do with us. Like, we're really messing up the climate. That's pretty obvious. Human-induced climate change is definitely a thing. And the climate is also changing not because of us. It's not completely all because of us. We're experiencing it, right? When religious people say there was a hurricane because it wanted to punish these people. No. There was a hurricane because on Earth there are hurricanes. And sometimes where people live, there's a hurricane. Sometimes there's a tornado. Sometimes there's a flood. Sometimes there's a drought. And it doesn't have anything to do with us. Do I think we live in a simulation? I think we live on an Earth. I think it makes a lot of sense that this is just the evolution of reality. And it's just happening. Right? And again, I'm not here to project my beliefs onto anybody. You are allowed to believe whatever you want to believe. But what I would suggest is if you're getting to the point where trying to perfect yourself, searching for a perfect heaven, looking for this after and thinking you're constantly not getting it because you're just not enlightened enough, or you're not spiritual enough, or you're not this or that enough. How is that working for you? If you've been chasing it for a while, do you actually know anyone who's achieved it? And if they say they have, are they the type of person that then later, 10 years later, we find out they're sexually abusing and doing drugs and doing, right? Like the 2020, when all of our gurus got exposed as just being normal people with really extreme habits, right? Promising this enlightenment that they didn't even have. Do we need to start to consider that maybe that's not a thing that exists? Do we maybe need to start to consider that that is childhood psychology being projected over and over and over again, and superstition? Because here's the thing, right? So self-love is going to disappoint you. Because first of all, again, in our psychology, we all fundamentally believe in our nervous systems. that when we are loved perfectly, we will be given everything that we need and everything that we want and no more pain. Because that's what we perceived in our childhoods. We perceived in our childhoods that the only reason we were in pain, the only reason we weren't being rescued, the only reason we weren't being cared for, the only reason we weren't safe was because caregivers weren't loving us. Because they were our source of everything. So do we understand this now? Deep in your core, you want to be loved and you want to be accepted because your fundamental program is, when I'm loved and accepted, I get everything that I need. No more pain. I'm provided with everything that I need. I'm rescued from everything that's terrible. I'm helped. I'm nurtured. I'm loved. I'm allowed to express. I'm allowed to grow. That's what happens when I'm loved. I'm safe and I get everything. Caregivers are the intermediary between me and reality. And if I just convince them to love me, they rescue me from all my pain, they give me everything that I need. That's what we learned in childhood. And now we're living that as adults. If I just become perfect, if I just become this or that, I will be loved, I will be accepted, I will be good enough by people, by God, by the universe, by whoever I'm following, right? And we have this childhood psychology that we don't even see. This is why we're all so codependent with each other, because we really truly believe that if we get rejected, we're going to die because other people are the source of everything. And that love is going to get us everything we want. That if we are perfectly loved, we will be perfectly provided for and perfectly safe. That's what we believe in our core bodies. That's why when we get rejected, we all feel like we're going to die. Because there's that such neurochemistry bond between love and provision and getting rejected, not getting love, and not having what we need. That's why we think we're going to die, because love was the middleman. So when we start to learn self-love, we start to be able to calm our nervous systems. When we're being rejected by someone else and we feel like we can still get access to love, that thing we're all so desperate for. At first, it's going to feel amazing, because our bodies are going to think, oh good, I'm being rescued. I'm going to get everything I need. I'm going to get everything I want. I have love all the time. I'm safe. Phew. There's going to be that moment. Sometimes we have that when someone else loves us. We genuinely get unconditional love from somebody else, and it feels like heaven just opened up. We're fine. Everything's great. Nothing ever needs to happen ever again. Life is perfect. We experience love. We experience unconditional love. It feels amazing. And then life keeps happening. We keep reaping the consequences of our actions. Negative things keep happening. Okay, just 1 second. Life keeps happening. Pain keeps happening. We can show up for ourselves. We can love ourselves. We can be unconditionally loved by ourselves or someone else. And we start to realize it's not giving us what we want. We're not perfectly safe. We can't perfectly express. Life is still a challenge. Things still aren't perfect. And we start to think, self-love didn't work. Or maybe this love isn't it. Or, okay, I need the plant medicine. I need the spirit journey. I need something else because this didn't work. I still have pain. I still have problems in my body. I still have coping mechanisms. I still have scapegoats. I still have all these bad habits, coping mechanisms, adaptive things that we do. It didn't fix everything. I'm being perfectly loved. I can show up to love myself no matter what. I can validate myself in all my emotions. I can validate and make myself safe in all my actions. I can do all this stuff. And I'm still in pain, and bad things are still happening. And this is when we can start to get into the superstition of self-love. where we start to say, okay, well, I guess I'm just not loving myself good enough. Because if I truly loved myself perfectly, right, I wouldn't experience pain anymore. So I must not be loving myself enough that I still get sick. I must not be loving myself that I'm still codependent. I must not be loving myself good enough that I'm still experiencing hard things. I must not have a high enough vibration yet that, my car still gets rear-ended or someone still gives me a shitty look on the street. We can even get into this superstition, which I think is a superstition, that if I love myself perfectly, it will train other people to love me perfectly. No one will ever be bad to me again. And if people are being rude to me, or if people don't treat me with respect, or if people don't empath me, or if people don't understand me, it's because I'm not showing them how to love me by loving me enough. No. Not everything has something to do with you. Other people are still, they're not drone robots that are just there to respond to you. Right? We're projecting our caregivers onto absolutely everything. That everyone and everything around us is just there for us. That we are the main character in the movie, and everyone and everything is just responding to us. The universe is just responding to us. Everything in our lives is because of us. And of course we want to believe that, because then it makes us feel like we have perfect control, and if we just perfect ourselves enough, we will escape pain. No bad thing can ever happen again. It's not reality. If we can make it through and see, okay, I can perfectly love myself. I can make myself safe. I can ground myself and regulate my nervous system with love. Because that's just how our nervous systems work right now. And we have to kind of accept that. Love equals that we feel like we're safe. It's an illusion. It's not real. But that's what our nervous systems learned in childhood. So in order to bring ourselves into regulation, we have to start with that love. That's why I say self-love is the foundation. Then we start to step into real adult reality that says, now I have to learn how real reality works. Now I have to learn why I'm getting the consequences that I'm getting. The complex nature of reality. What does have to do with me? What do I have control over? What is other people's shit? What is the system I live in that I didn't choose? That I don't have the power to change? And that I have to work within for some reason, in some way. And realizing that self-love brings our nervous system into regulation enough that we can observe the reality that's in front of us, and we can take practical steps to make life better for ourselves as we can. That is actual freedom in real reality. No wonder I never felt safe, because I never felt love in my childhood. Yes. But understanding that, again, that love isn't actual safety. Not in real adulthood. In adulthood, safety is I can be present in showing up for what is happening in my environment. I can learn what I can learn from it to the best of my ability, and I can do what I can do about it to the best of my ability. And understanding that that's never going to be perfect understanding, perfect awareness, and then I create my own heaven. We need to start to understand that life is always going to have struggle. There's always going to be stuff we don't understand. There's always going to be limits to our understanding, bumping up against the limits of our understanding, having pain, having confusion, not knowing, having things we're working out, having negative emotions. All of these things are a part of life forever. And what self-love does is, first, it makes us realize that we can feel like we're worthy and lovable and acceptable, and all of these things that we think that we need from the outside, no matter what. The system doesn't have to dictate to you whether you feel like you're valuable or not, whether you feel like you're good enough or not, whether you feel like you're a worthwhile human being. You can start to do that for yourself. Love will tell your nervous system that you're safe, which then opens your perception. It takes you out of fight and flight, okay? Because again, remember, when we feel like love is going away, when we feel pain, when we feel scared, when we feel confused and we don't know how to solve our own problem, we go into fight or flight. And in fight or flight, we just do what we've always done. We're tapping into nervous system programs that we learned in our childhoods. This is what I do when I'm not safe. So, this is why some of us are going to start to recognize. Every time I feel like someone rejects me, I start going into workaholism. Every time something bad, I get rear-ended, I realize I don't have enough money to pay for something. Something traumatic happens out there. All of a sudden, I can't stop myself from having alcohol. All of a sudden, I can't stop myself from picking that fight with my partner over and over again. All of a sudden, I'm in micromanaging my body. What does that have to do with getting rear-ended? Well, it made you feel unsafe. And when you were unsafe, you started going to your coping mechanism. Your coping mechanism probably had absolutely nothing to do with the thing that made you unsafe, but it put you in fight or flight. The thing you learned in your childhood is, my behavior is the reason I'm being rejected. Here's what I did to fix my behavior so that my caregivers would love me, so I'm going to do that now. We get triggered into our scapegoat, our compulsive behaviors, all these things. Literally, we have a fight with somebody, and all of a sudden, all we can think about is work. And we're just like micromanaging work, and we're doing work, and we're work, because work is our coping mechanism. We felt rejected, we felt unsafe, and now we're in our coping mechanism. And it seems like these things aren't correlated, but they absolutely are. We're being triggered into our nervous system responses. And then it means that we can't actually show up for the thing that's actually happening. We can't deal with the actual reality of, why don't I have money in my bank account? What do I do about the car that rear-ended me? What do I do about the actual thing that's happening in my life? The actual problem. We start to say, okay, I'm having a problem. And then our nervous system say, okay, well, the thing that saves your life is you change your behavior. Here's how you did it. Do you see? This is why we all get triggered into our shit over and over and over again and never deal with our actual problems. Because we never learned to deal with our actual problems. We learned that caregivers will deal with our problems if we are perfect. Does that make sense to everybody? This is why we get triggered into our programs over and over and over again and never seem to be able to deal with our actual problems. Because our problems trigger us into childhood behavior, which says, if I'm perfect, external reality will take care of me. If I am perfect, I will be cared for. The only reason something bad is happening to me is because I did something wrong. So then your nervous system says, okay, well, what was the thing that made you wrong in your childhood, and what did you do to cope, and now you're going to do that. You see? So when we love ourselves, we give ourselves that artificial safety, but it tells our nervous system, you're okay. And then we can open our perception to be like, okay, no, what's the actual problem? What's real reality here? The thing that happened. Thank you. Good. The thing that happened was I got rear-ended. That wasn't because I didn't work hard enough today. That wasn't because my vibration was low. Sometimes someone was just busy and they rear-ended you. And we have to learn to understand that not everything is because of us. Sometimes our partners and people we love do things, and it's not because of us. And we make everything that they're doing and everything that they're not doing because of us. Every need of ours they're meeting, everything that they're not meeting in us is because of our... No, it's not. They're another person who's different from you. And we need to learn to communicate and be adults. Sometimes you're in debt because you don't know how to budget and you haven't learned that. And you keep trying to numb the behavior and perfect yourself in your self-help and self-love instead of dealing with your financial problem. And it's not because there's something wrong with you, and it's not because you're choosing that. Your nervous system is driving you. right? This is why so many of us don't even see what our real problems are. We just keep trying to live our conditioning, hoping that if we just do it right, one day we'll feel good. And then we have all these self-sabotage and these coping things, and we don't understand why that keeps happening. Because again, the way of life we were taught doesn't work. And we keep trying to be the perfect people that our caregivers wanted us to be and taught us to be, and that keeps equaling pain, which means we're going to have to change. We have to do something totally different than what our caregivers taught. We have to be people that our caregivers might reject. And that triggers our nervous system into being who our caregivers wanted us to be, and then coping and not seeing. Right? So then we work these jobs and we do this thing. So I got this question. Can you speak about people who get rich and famous in a short period of time and become assholes, start doing too much drug, sex, living too fast just to unravel in general? I think, can you understand that now? They truly believed that this love and approval was going to get them everything. They get there. They get it. And it didn't make them happy. It doesn't work. It doesn't deliver them from pain. So they keep chasing highs. Right? Because again, at first, that love, that adoration, that feeling that we're being approved of. So while they're getting famous and people are approving of them and they're getting all the crowd attention and all this shit, right? Their nervous systems are just going off. Like, oh my God, I'm in heaven. This is it. It's probably better than any drug we could possibly ever take. Just that feeling of unconditional love. And what our bodies perceive that means. Ultimate safety, heaven, no bad thing ever happens again. It's the high of a lifetime. This is why I think more people are addicted to love, like new love and sex and all of those hormones, than they are to drugs and substances. Because to our bodies, we really believe like that chemical cocktail in and of itself just feels amazing. But also, it means to us we're going to be safe and loved and no more pain forever. All of our pain is going to be taken away. And then it doesn't. And right, like these people, it's kind of like normal people have alcohol and they get that buzz, but okay, these people are like on cocaine. Like that approval level for a thing that isn't really even you. Right? Like that is like I say, the high of a lifetime. And then you're gonna come down. And life is gonna keep being life. And people are still gonna be people, and problems are still gonna be problems, and you're gonna chase that high after high after high after high after high after high until it destroys you. Because we never learn to just be adults in real reality, and that's what that is. The next question is, it's like trusting that it's safe to reach out, but then it feels so icky to reach out because of the fear of rejection. How do we change that, on a body level? Again, we start to be able to be there for ourselves and realize that other people's love is always going to be imperfect. Right? We stop searching for that perfect love in others when we know we can be there for ourselves. When we start to really understand that even when someone rejects us, we can love ourselves. And then, more than that, when we are able to start to show our bodies that I got rejected just now, but I'm still okay. This is why I think orienting is so important. Like when you get rejected and you get triggered and you get into that spiral place, being able to be like, stop, okay, what's actually happening? Like, am I dying right now? And forcing your perception to see those 5 things you see, 4 things you feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste, and then list 10 things that are going well. Like, show your body, I am not actually dying right now. And we do that over and over and over and over and over again. We start to train the body that we can be rejected and we don't actually die. Because again, we have to understand that our physiology literally believes we're about to die when we get rejected. And then usually what we do then is a coping mechanism. We do what we've always done, and then the body perceives that we're still alive and says, good, the coping mechanism worked. Right? So then we do it over and over and over again. We do the coping mechanism over and over and over again because we felt rejected, we felt scared, we felt whatever, just like what I was talking about. Something bad happens, something scary happens, We do our coping mechanism, and then we believe and see that we didn't die, and then we just programmed in even more. Our coping mechanism is what saved our lives. So we have to start to pattern interrupt when we get rejected, when something bad happens, when a challenge happens, when we're scared and we're triggered. We orient first. Okay, I'm not actually dying. I'm not actually dying. A bad thing happened. It did. I really did get rear-ended. I really did get fired. Someone really did reject me. I didn't have what I needed. And I'm not dead. I don't have to do my coping mechanism because I'm not dead. I'm not dying. And now what's the actual thing that's in front of me? What's the actual thing that's in front of me that I can actually do? What's my actual power? What's my actual stuff? What actually happened here? We start to ask ourselves these questions. And that's how we start to set ourselves free. Because when we can deal with real reality and not our projection of a bad thing happened because of me, and I changed my behavior, and then I'm going to be loved and I'll be safe, that's the loop we're all in. And that's why none of us can ever get out and figure out what our real problems are. Because we keep doing our coping mechanism every time we're scared, and our bodies perceive that's what saved our lives, and then it gets reinforced. And then we have the same problem, and then we do the same behavior. And all this, right, it's a cycle. And we have to learn to break it by first just coming into the real moment and being like, what's actually happening here? Okay, I had a mental breakdown for 3 days. I've been working towards a goal for my day to get away from my toxic family. The money had not come yet, so I had to deal with staying at home, toxic family. Yeah, right? And again, sometimes we're in really tough situations. We're in toxic environments. And having to learn to see where our power actually is in those situations is challenging. Because I get it. I've been there. I know what it's like to still be in my parents' house. And to be continually reinforced with this, you're not good enough, you're not doing it right, you're bad. This is how reality is, and it hurts you really bad. And you're the one that's wrong and bad. And that's where that, like, okay, but what if it isn't me? What if I'm not the problem? What if I'm not the thing that's wrong here? What if I have these feelings for a reason? What if my body is telling me something that is true? What if my emotions is telling me something that is true? And it's not that I suck. And it's not that I'm doing it wrong. And it's not that I'm horrible. And it's not just that I'm not being given what I need and what I want because I'm failing. What's real reality? Right? And we slowly just start to work with this. And then we're going to be able to take little steps. Because again, right, like me getting out of my parents' household. I didn't just wake up and get out of my parents' household. It was a long, slow process of jobs I didn't want to work and just doing things that weren't great and having to work with the system that exists. Right? Like I was just like everybody else. I just had to work more than I physically could, but you do it because you need to pay rent to do the thing, and it's hard. And I think that's like, I'm not promising you that self-love is going to make your life perfect in heaven. It's going to give you the capacity to see what your next step is. And it's going to give you the capacity to do the next step. Because you can support yourself inside. And realizing that this next step isn't going to be the thing that takes you to heaven. It's just going to be a next step. And then you do that, and then it's going to take you to your next step. And then your next step, and your next step. And it's going to be a journey. Like for me, I've been doing this for 14 years. So yeah, now I'm at a totally different place than I was. But it took a long time. And it's just steps. And it's just growth. And it's realizing, okay, this is the reality I want it to be. This is the ultimate reality of who I am. But that doesn't mean that me being my most authentic self means I'm going to be rewarded with a whole bunch of people who love me and like $1 million for doing my work. That's not a thing. I'm still operating within a system that values a lot of things that I don't give. I'm not flashy. I'm not making these big 30-day promises. I'm not marketing. I don't look how I'm supposed to look. And I realize that. And I'm being my most authentic self. And it didn't equal millions of followers. You see what I'm saying here? Like the promise that being your authentic self is going to lead to all this success. Well, no, we still live in a shitty system that celebrates a lot of really shitty things. It's not to say that you can't have success. It's not to say that you can't have a meaningful, awesome life. But it's just to say we need to start to realize that reality, the freedom of reality, is being able to witness what's actually happening in front of us so we can deal with what's actually happening in front of us. That's actual freedom. To get out of our superstition that if I just perfect myself, everything will fix itself. And we start to say, no, the way that I fix my problems is by showing up for my problems. And one step at a time, as much as I can, figuring out what I can do about that. And realizing that, yeah, life is complex. Some of it is about me. Some of it is about the collective. Some of it is stuff I have complete control over. Some of it is stuff I don't. Some of it is stuff I'm just going to have to learn to accept, and it's going to be degrading, and it's not going to be great, and so how do I nourish and support myself for that? Some stuff is like, I can't change it right now, but I'm going to work towards being able to change it. Some stuff is, I really can change this. I don't have to participate in this system. I can check out of this in a way, and risk being not liked, and lose a bunch of things. But still, I'll be okay. Maybe I'll even be better off. We start to learn how. I'm getting triggered, right? I'm scared. I want to do my coping mechanism. I want to do my self-sabotage. I want to blame myself. I want to do all this stuff. Okay, first, can I orient? Can I show my nervous system that I'm not actually a child trapped in my childhood home where my parents had everything and I didn't have anything? I'm an adult now. I can figure things out. And I might have a problem that's really complicated, and it's going to be a lot of trial and error and figuring and finding and trying and reading and getting a therapist and all these things. And we just be willing to go on the journey. And growth stops being a thing we're afraid of, okay? Because that's another big thing. We start to lose our fear of being wrong and finding out we were wrong and finding out we didn't have it right. And we start to celebrate that. Because when you realize you're wrong about something, that's the first step to freedom. Because if you were doing something that isn't actually getting you the results that you wanted, if you kept doing that, if you never realize that, you'll never get the results you want. Right? And when we have self-love, we can say, okay, I was wrong. Good. Thank God. Thank God I realized that. Because now I have to, like, even if that means, but I don't know what's right, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, I don't know what the right answer is, that's okay. You can figure it out. You will figure it out. The first step to figuring out the answer is realizing the answer you thought was the answer, that isn't the answer. Figuring out you were wrong is the best thing that will ever happen to you. That is the first step of liberation. And when we can love ourselves, we release the conditioning that says, when you're wrong, you're bad. You show your nervous system, I was wrong and I'm still okay. I don't know what the answer is yet, but I'll figure it out. And like I say, the safer you make yourself, the more your perception opens, and you will be able to figure it out. Because that's what I'm saying. That love shifts your body out of fight and flight that forces you to do the same thing you've always done into rest and digest, where you can open your perception and figure shit out. People always ask me, what's your secret? How did you figure out your life? How do you know all this stuff? I loved myself into that artificial safety that told my nervous system I was going to be okay. I showed myself I wasn't dying. And then I looked at real reality and I just said, what can I do about this? What's actually happening? Why is this happening? Is it really about me? Is it really that I did something wrong? Or is this just another person? What's going on in my body? What's going on around me? Cause and effect. I can figure it out. I can change my behavior. I can get rejected for changing because I'm now breaking the mold. I'm not doing all the things that everyone told me to do. My body thinks I'm going to die. It's okay. That's how I figured it out. I made myself safe inside. I said it's okay if you're wrong. I said it's okay if you don't know. I said it's okay. Now what's happening? What's the next step you can take? What's right in front of you? Just one step. You can do a step. That's how I treated myself. And one step at a time, 14 years later, I figured a lot of shit out. I look enlightened to some people. But guess what? I still get depressed and sad and anxious and all of these things. And it's okay, because I know that those things are communicating something with me. And life is always going to be an up and down. And I can figure it out. Okay, so when they say that humans are wired for connection, what does that mean outside of the illusion that love equals safety? What drives our needs for love, intimacy, and connection outside of that program? Because again, we are interdependent. None of us are going to survive alone. And it's this black and white thinking, right? We need to start to question our black and white thinking. Well, is it that we need each other and we're wired for connection, or we're supposed to be completely independent? No. It's somewhere in the middle. Because here's the thing. Even if you were fully rejected by all of your family and all of your friends, and you didn't have anyone in your life who was like your friend and loving you, could you still go to the grocery store? Could you still rent an apartment? Could you still hook yourself up to the internet? All of these things are you relying on other people. You're surviving because of the work of others. You are someone who is in connection with everyone else in humanity. Same thing. You're being your true authentic self. You're doing everything that's in alignment with you. Consensus reality might just reject you outright. And that is going to have an effect on you. So we need to start to understand that we are interdependent. And we need to start to navigate. What are the things that I can sacrifice as far as consensus reality approval and still get my needs met? What are the things that I require other people for that maybe I have to play the game a little bit in order to get those needs met? It's a cost-benefit analysis. You see what I'm saying? We're not wired for connection. It's just a part of reality. None of us can survive completely on our own. Life is too complicated. But none of us will ever have to, because society is set up in a way where even if no one is like in your life liking you, you still have access to infrastructure and all of these things, because life is inherently connected. Yes? Okay, got a life thing happening right now. I'm numbing with food while listening to you. I'm aware and telling my body to stop, but my body doesn't care. And that's exactly it. You don't tell your body to stop. You make it perfectly safe. This is what ultimate self-love in the beginning is this. Even if I do this for the rest of my life, I'm going to love and accept me. That's why I know this is so complicated. Because yes, eventually self-love will lead you to change. But if we go in saying, I'm going to love myself to try to change myself, that's not love and it doesn't work. Self-love is saying, even if I never change, and I keep getting these terrible consequences for the rest of my life, it's okay, I'm not going to reject myself. I don't have to change. Because remember, you're doing what you're doing for a reason. Your body literally thinks you will die if you don't keep doing this. There is positive intention. There are needs being met with the eating and the numbing. That you can't just take it away and expect to be okay. The analogy that I always give is like we all need vitamin C, and it's like we've been raised in a culture that says eating oranges and things that are rich in vitamin C is bad for you. So what we all are doing is we're going into the garbage and we're finding a whole bunch of lemons and oranges that got thrown away that are moldy, and we're eating them. And we're getting sick because they're covered in mold. And we're thinking, if I could just stop eating the oranges, I would be better. And the thing that's wrong with me is that I'm eating the oranges and I'm getting sick because I'm eating the oranges. But the real reality is if we just stop eating the oranges, we get scurvy. We're not okay. Culture told us we're supposed to be able to not have anything with vitamin C and be perfectly healthy, but we're not. Culture was wrong. But then culture has poisoned the medicine. So now we don't have a healthy way of meeting that need. So what we have to understand is that everything that we're doing, all of our coping, our self-sabotage, our scapegoat, it's meeting a need to a degree. If you just stop, that's going to freak your body out because it's meeting a need on some level that you don't know how to meet in any other way. So we first make it fully safe to do our behavior. And we start asking ourselves, what am I getting out of this behavior? How is this helping me? What is the actual positive benefit here? And we start to see, okay, well, right? Oh, I need vitamin C. I need the oranges. It's not the eating the oranges that's bad. It's the fact that the oranges are in the garbage and covered in mold. So maybe I can source some fresh lemons and some fresh oranges and eat those and then see, wow, my culture was wrong. I now got rid of scurvy and I got rid of the negative side effects of eating rotten oranges. That's what we do. We make it perfectly safe. What is the positive intention in this negative habit? What am I getting out of this? How is it helping me? Because it is. And sometimes it is. The thing that it's helping me do is numb the pain of being rejected. Because I want to be this way and culture told me I can't. And then sometimes we have to just slowly start to practice being the new way and seeing we don't die and still numbing ourselves. And then we practice the new way, see we don't die, but our nervous system still get a little bit, and then we get numbed, and then we eventually try the new thing enough that we feel safe in it, and it feels better that we don't need the garbage oranges anymore. Right? So like the metaphor would be, we keep eating the oranges in the garbage while we start looking for other sources of vitamin C. And we practice other sources of vitamin C for a while before we start to see, okay, that works, and now I don't need this anymore. Like, we're never going to get rid of a coping mechanism. We're going to figure out the thing that we were getting out of it, how to get that need met in a new and different way. Does that make any sense? We make it perfectly safe to do what we're doing. We look for the positive intention. We start to see, how can I get these same needs met in a new way while still doing my old behavior? Promising yourself you're not going to take the old thing away. And then we do the new thing, do the new thing, do the new thing, while we're doing the old thing, while we're doing the old thing, while we're doing the old thing, giving ourselves love, making it safe, making it okay, seeing the consequences, not blaming ourselves, and just saying, okay, sometimes this is what it is. And then eventually our bodies learn the new way works better, and then we don't want to do the old thing anymore. That's how we do that. Slowly, with love and compassion and time, and training our nervous systems. Okay? So this is what self-love actually does. It doesn't liberate you from your self-sabotage immediately. It gives you the capacity to understand what you're getting out of your self-sabotage, how it's helping you, how it's helping you. And like I say, sometimes it really is just, it's stopping you from being my real self. And then you have to start being your real self. And then that's going to trigger you even more. And you have to make your coping mechanism even safer until eventually you see that you can be your real self and be rejected and still be okay. And then eventually you won't be so scared anymore. But a lot of the time, doing the work we need to do means we're going to need our coping mechanism even more for a period of time. And that's okay. We make it okay. We make it safe. We never force ourselves. Because we just have to start to deal with real reality. And real reality is complicated, and real reality is one step at a time, and real reality is one step forward, two steps back. And we give ourselves that feeling of love to bring our nervous systems into regulation so that we can start to observe reality for how it actually is. We can observe our patterns. We can watch ourselves. We can do new things. What we can't do when we're in fight or flight. And we just have to work with the fact that this is what our nervous system thinks is safety. So we work with it. Okay? And yes, we love having relationships. We love being with one another. And I think, again, I just have to say it, right? This is another superstition. Loving yourself and figuring out who you really are and doing all this stuff is never going to mean you're completely isolated and no one ever talks to you again. We're all so afraid of that. I know. We all think if I love myself, no one will love me. No one will talk to me. It means I will have to have no relationships. It's not going to happen. There are 8 billion people on this planet. You are connected to several billion of them on the device you're watching me on right now. There's no such thing as you never having another human connection ever again. It's not going to happen. So don't worry about it. Right? Don't get into that. You're going to be okay. It's going to be weird. You might lose people, right? And this is, again, Martha Beck calls it the generalized other. You're going to feel like you're going to lose everyone. But what you really mean is you're going to lose those 5 or 10 people that you think everyone is. Because we all have that. The people that were part of our conditioning, that are our family and our friends that are around us, we're going to feel like we're going to lose them. And if we lose them, that's everyone. And what you're going to realize is it's not everyone. There's a whole big world out there of people who believe completely opposite of what those people believe. Maybe you'll lose your everyone. And then realize that there's a huge amount of people out there who aren't your everyone, who will love you, and that you will have a relationship with. Okay? So that's that. Let's see where we're projecting our childhood consciousness of if I just do everything perfectly, caregivers, God, whatever, will give me everything that I want. And we start to say, okay, well, love is the artificial safety. It brings my nervous system into regulation. It will help me figure out what is and isn't hurting, reality, whatever, and then I just take my steps. I love myself and my coping mechanisms and my self-sabotage and my scapegoats. I make it safe. I start to observe the positive reality. I start to observe what I'm getting out of it, so I can start to show myself new ways while holding on to the old thing. I start to notice when I'm hurting or scared or whatever, and it triggers me into my behaviors. And I start to make that safe again, and then I say, okay, well, what was the real problem? What actually happened? Where can I learn just a little bit from this? And again, understanding. We're not going to know, right? It's not going to be like, oh, I love myself safe, and now I fully understand why my relationship problem is the way that it is. It's going to be steps. I fully understand what's wrong with my body. Steps. I fully understand how to get my career that I want. Nope. Steps. Over and over again we do this. It's a practice. It's not a thing. All right? Thank you for being here. Thank you for your questions. I hope I answered them. Yeah. Thanks for being here, like I said. And I will see you same time, same place next week. All right? Have a fabulous week. You're all amazing. You're all perfectly worthy of love, just as you are right here, right now. One step at a time. You will figure it out. And that is actual freedom. And that is why self-love will let you down, and then it will set you free. Okay? Mwah.